We are coming to the end of the festive season, which means we are entering the season of ambitious TBRs that I'll probably never complete, hoping that I'll read more than I will actually read by the end of 2025. Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As I said, it is now the season of TBRs where I start to run through all the books that I want to read going into 2025, and of course that means we are going to start with the 28 books that I want to read before I turn 28. Now I don't want to think too hard about that number because it feels like literally yesterday I was turning 25 and now I am 27 turning 28. I know I'm not old in any like scheme of the word, but man, I miss being a baby. Anyway, this is going to be a long list full of 28 books, so let's crack straight in. First up, we've got The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. This is the sequel to The Serpent and the Wings of Night by this author. This book and this series has gone absolutely everywhere. I think the latest book has just come out, so of course I'm excited to be continuing on with the series, but this basically follows Araya, who is a human living in a world of vampires, and in order to prove her place in her society and kind of protect herself, she enters something called the Kajari, which is a Hunger Games style series of trials where only one person comes out alive, and she is entirely up against other vampires. So naturally she needs to make alliances, and so she makes an alliance with the sworn enemy of her father's kingdom, and his name is Rain. It's an enemies to lovers romance if you hadn't already guessed, and I absolutely love the first book, and the cliffhanger at the end of it has seriously got me like gagging, so I need to read the second book. In a similar vein, we've got Skyshade, which is the third book in the Lightlark series by Aster. I'm so sorry that there's a sticker there. I just bought this recently, and basically this is a series which follows Isla, who is a wildling, and she is sent to a series of games called the Centennial, which happens every 100 years in her kingdom. And the purpose of the Centennial is to break the curses on each of these 6 rulers. Sounds simple enough, but the stakes are incredibly high because in order to break the curses, one of the rulers must die. And if that ruler dies, then their entire kingdom dies with them. So Isla, as one of the weakest and newest rulers in this whole world, she sees herself as a serious, easy target. And so she proceeds to make alliances, in particular with a guy named Grim, who is kind of our Shadow Daddy King, and then also another guy named Oro, who is more of our blonde hair Sun King kind of character. Now don't see those descriptions as easy to identify who is going to be the eventual love interest, because by this book, I still don't know. So that is book number 2. Sorry if the lighting's doing weird things. I'm working with natural lighting and it's not always my best friend. But anyway, next up we've got Wolf Girl by Leia Stone. This is book 1 in a series, and it follows a girl named Demi who has been something called cuffed all her life, which basically means she has no access to the wolf inside her. She's a shifter. Her parents were banished from Wolf City before she was even born, so she's never met another wolf like her until she meets Sawyer Hudson, who is the alpha's son, and he extends an invitation to her to uncuff her, which basically means she goes through puberty at an incredibly rapid rate as she comes to terms with this new wolf living inside of her and her access to it, and also I assume fall in love with Sawyer. Next up we've got Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver, which is the second book in the Rose Hill series, which is Elsie Silver's latest series, and I think this is the most recent book that she's published as well, and this follows Skylar and West. So this whole series is like single dad romances, and Skylar is basically a small town country singer who's come to the farm that West lives on in order to record an album with the hero of the previous book, Wild Love, and I think his name was Ford. There she meets West, who is a shameless flirt but also incredibly dedicated to his kids, and she proceeds to fall in love with the kids and I guess over time him as well. Next up we've got That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. There's definitely a lot of romances here if you couldn't already tell. And this follows Avery and Emmett, and Avery is looking to start up her own new business, but she just can't seem to make ends meet in terms of money. So she agrees to a deal with Emmett Rhodes, who is running for mayor in the small town but desperately needs a fiance in order to prove the sort of upstanding family values side of his campaign. And so they agree to become fake fiancés. He will co-sign on the loan for, I think it's her new restaurant, and she will be the picture perfect wife in front of the press. Next up we have The Game Changer by Lana Ferguson. I read The Fake Mate by this author and didn't super love it, but I'm hoping that this one will change the game for me and this author. Sorry, that was a horrible pun. But anyway, after a very public breakup becomes a PR nightmare for Ian Chase on his NHL team, he decides that he just needs to focus on his game, but that seems less likely than a hat trick. So with his career and his team's image in jeopardy, Ian finds a solution in his best friend's little sister, Delilah Baker, who is known as the queen or the sweetheart of baking. As her ratings and numbers start to dwindle on her TV show of like the darling of baking, she starts to see an opportunity between her and her brother's team where she can help them fix their image and also boost the ratings on her show at the same time by teaming up and having some of these hockey players appear on the show. So naturally, Ian gets involved, and I'm guessing it's a beautiful best friend's little sister romance that comes about afterwards. Next up, we have Match Point by Katherine Reilly, and this is a really interesting book kind of set around the whole Wimbledon tennis thing, where basically the entirety of like SW London or Southwest London shuts down for a period of time when the tennis is on because all the tourists flock to this area and it becomes just incredibly hectic, but also a lot of fun. So this follows Flora Hendricks, who for the period of Wimbledon tennis has decided to rent out her apartment and make some money, only for her to then sort of renege on that and decide that she's gonna live there anyway, but the person that has rented the apartment refuses to leave. And that is Kieran O'Sullivan, who is the hotshot tennis player going for his Grand Slam that everybody can't stop talking about. So in a classic forced proximity kind of trope style, they are forced to live together and I guess deal with each other as sparks fly and hopefully a romance blooms. Next up, we've got Girls Who Burn by MK Pajano. I picked this up at Yelp and I'm very, very intrigued by it because it's kind of like a murder mystery, also enemies to lovers romance, and I'm just excited by that. And this follows Addie, whose sister died a year ago, and the sister's death was officially ruled an accident, but Addie does not buy it. Then we have Seth, who is the boy next door that she just loves to hate because he represents everything that she thinks is wrong with the world. His wealthy family is as corrupt as they come, and Addie is pretty sure that his cousin is the one who murdered her sister. So can Addie convince Seth to team up with her to discover the truth, and can they resist the tension burning between them as they work together, or will they become the killer's next victim? Next up, we've got Hooked by Emily McIntyre, and this is a book that I received in a book box, and I know nothing about it, but I am super intrigued by what I do know, in the sense that it's a dark romance. It's kind of fairy tale retellings, but the villain gets the girl. So for this one, it's Captain Hook. But in this scenario, we've got Peter Pan is Wendy's father, and James, or Captain Hook, is his just worst enemy. So when James sees the 20-year-old daughter Wendy walk into his bar, he decides to, I guess, seduce her in order to corrupt her and get back at his worst enemy. Next up, we've got The City of Stardust by Georgia Summers, and this follows Violet Everly, who 10 years ago, her mother disappeared in an effort to break the family's curse. So now Violet must either find her mother or take her place, and her hunt leads her to a magical underworld of power-hungry scholars, fickle gods, and monsters bent on revenge. And also to the handsome Alexander, who cannot be trusted, but yet to whom she is undeniably drawn. But as their adventure continues, time is running out and Violet finds herself drawn to the City of Stardust where the curse began. Next up, we've got Wildfire by Hannah Grace, which is the sequel to Icebreaker, and I think it's the Maple Hills series is what it's called entirely, but I could be mixing up series there. But anyway, the first book was an ice hockey romance, and this one is similar in the sense that it follows one of the ice hockey players, but it's set at summer camp. So this follows Russ and Aurora, and Russ and Aurora, I think, met one night at a party. They had a steamy kiss, and then Aurora disappeared before Russ ever found out her name, only for them to be sort of thrown back together when they realize that they're both camp counselors at a summer camp. So naturally things start to heat up again, but the only problem is that the camp has a rule about no staff fraternizing. So Russ doesn't want to be sent home early, but Aurora isn't ever really wanting to follow the rules. So as things heat up, they'll have to resist or risk starting something they just can't stop. Next up, we've got Behind the Net, which is the first book in the Vancouver Storm series by Stephanie Archer, and this follows Pippa and Jamie. And Pippa, after her ex crushed her dreams in the music industry, she has become a live-in assistant for Jamie Stretcher, who is an NHL player and sort of resident bad boy. He demands that in order to be an adequate assistant, she must move in with him, and then he proceeds to find out that her ex never really satisfied her in bed, and so his competitive streak comes out and he decides to take up the mantle. As their relationship builds, the creative spark that she used to feel about music is starting to grow again. So she's writing songs again, she's feeling brave on stage, and she's falling for him as well. Next up, we've got Hopeless by Elsie Silver, which is the fifth and final book in the Chestnut Springs series that I have been delaying because I just don't want this world to be over. And this follows Bo Eaton, who is the final brother whose story has been hinted at throughout the rest of the series and whose story I just cannot wait for. And he's basically a war veteran struggling with PTSD and whose family just will not leave him alone. And then he meets Bailey, whose family is from the wrong side of the tracks, and she believes that everyone in the town holds this against her. But Beau bets that that's not the case, and so they agree to be fake fiancés in order to help with her reputation and also get his family off his back. And as things go, fake fiancés obviously turns into some very real feelings. Next up, we've got In the Weeds by B.K. Borison, which is the sequel to Love Light Farms, which I read recently and I absolutely adored. And this follows Evelyn St. James and Beckett. Beckett is the sort of grumpy, silent, brooding farmhand on Love Light Farms. And then Evelyn St. James is the social media influencer that came along to Love Light Farms as part of the influencer competition that the previous book sort of covered. The only problem between the two of them is that they have a bit of a history of a steamy hot one night stand, after which I think Evelyn disappeared from Beckett's life, only to now reappear, and tensions are seriously high because she's feeling disconnected from her work and desperate to find something real, and Beckett is just confused about why he's so distracted about this woman. Next up, we've got Swift and Saddle by Lyla Sage, which is the second book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series by this author, and it follows Weston and Ada. And Ada has just come into town because she's found herself a lucrative new interior design job at the family ranch. Sorry, Rebel Blue Ranch, not family ranch. I'll be specific. But anyway, she goes into the bar on her first night and she stumbles across this incredibly handsome cowboy that she just can't take her eyes off of, and he gives her a kiss that just leaves her sizzling and unable to stop thinking about it, only to then show up at her job and realize that he is one of the family members that owns Rebel Blue Ranch. So it's one of those classic like boss employee sort of romances, except she's the interior designer that they've hired, and obviously the two just can't fight their feelings for each other. Next up, we've got Plot Twist by Breea Keenan, and this follows Becca Taylor, who's just having a really shit summer. Her best friend has died, her good-for-nothing ex is back in her life, and her career is an absolute freefall. So when she receives an invitation from who she thinks is a female author named Reilly O'Connor to travel to Ireland, she can't pack her bags fast enough, only for her to find out when she gets there that Reilly Connor is very much a dude. He is a hot, 6-foot-tall Irish man. But with their complicated past getting in the way, Becca and Reilly just cannot seem to get on the same page. Next up, we've got Caught Up by Liz Tomforde, which is the third book in the Windy City series, I think it's called, by this author, and this follows Kai and Miller. Kai is a baseball player, so this is a baseball romance, and he's also a single dad who just can't seem to find the right nanny for his son. Miller is a high-end pastry chef who has just received the most prestigious award in her industry, but then hits an absolute creative block. So with 2 months to turn things around, rather than focusing on baking like she should be, her dad convinces her to take up the job of a live-in nanny for one of the players on his team, and obviously that is Kai. So Miller Montgomery is the last woman that Kai should fall for. She is too wild, too young, and too unattached. Chicago is just a quick stop for her. He thought he'd be counting down the days until she left, but summer feels too short when he starts thinking about forever. Next up, we've got Say You Swear by Meagan Brandy, and I know literally nothing about this book, and I don't really want to know anything about this book other than the fact that it is a sports romance and it is a love triangle between the past lover, I guess, that this woman had and a potential future love interest that she meets after the first one sort of broke her heart. Next up, we've got Firelight by Sophie Jordan, which is the first book in a trilogy, and I own the full trilogy, so I'm hoping to just smash out this whole series next year. And this follows Jacinda, who is unique even amongst the Drakai, which leads her family to be kicked out essentially by their community and forced to flee. As they venture into the human world, she struggles to adapt and her Drakai spirit starts to fade. She is a dragon shifter, if I didn't say that already. But the one thing that revives it is the gorgeous and elusive Will, whose family just so happens to hunt her kind. And Jacinda can't resist getting closer to him, even though she knows she's risking not only her life, but the Drakai's most closely guarded secret. Next up, we've got Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields, which is the first book in the Deadly Divine duet, and I hear it's very spicy, very fun, and it follows our main character, who is an unwanted changeling. She has no name, no family, and no answers. She desperately just wants to find out where she came from. So she agrees to make a deal with the Fae Prince where he will take her into the Fae realm and help her find her family, so long as she marries him. But things are not as they seem, and soon after arriving at his wintry manor, she begins to unravel a dangerous web of lies. Far deadlier still, she's fallen in love with a monster who has no heart. I don't know why I held that so excitedly while saying he has no heart. Like, that's horrible. I feel so bad for her. Next up, we've got Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, which is a classic boy next door romance between Liz and Wes. Wes has been irritating Liz ever since they were kids, except now she's realized that he is her only path to securing the prom date of her dreams, because this guy just so happens to be Wes's best friend. So as they team up to get this guy's attention, Wes and Liz begin to question whether or not that is the perfect romance, or maybe the one that they're building with each other is. Next up, we've got Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong, and this, I'm so excited for this because I desperately loved These Violent Delights and Now Violent Ends by this author. She is amazing at creating these incredibly immersive worlds, and I'm hoping this will be no different. So this follows Princess Kala, who vowed to tear down San Air's tyrannical monarchy, and so first she killed her parents and now she's going after her uncle. Because he's so reclusive though, the only way to reach him is by competing in a series of games that the monarchy hosts, and then be crowned the winner by his hand. But the only thing getting in her way is Anton Macusa, whose childhood love lies in a coma, and he is deep in debt trying to keep her alive, and the only way out of that debt is to win the games. So the two form an uneasy alliance, and victory is soon within their reach, but as their mutual attraction proves increasingly undeniable, Kala must decide what she's playing for, her lover or her kingdom. Next up, we've got King of Sloth by Anna Huang, which is the fourth book in the Kings of Sin series by this author. I didn't love the first two, but I adored King of Greed, so I'm hoping I'll like King of Sloth too. It really could go either way. This follows Xavier and Sloane, and Xavier is this party playboy who just really doesn't want to take over his father's empire or his family's empire, despite the fact that his father is pushing for him to. He makes the life of his publicist incredibly difficult, and that is Sloane. He also manages to charm just about any woman that he wants, except for Sloane, only to realize that Sloane is maybe the woman that he truly wants. Next up, we've got The Dagger and the Flame by Katherine Doyle. I am so excited for this read because I adore the Twin Crowns, Burning Crowns, Cursed Crowns, the Crowns, Twin Crowns series by Katherine Doyle and Catherine Weber, and this is the first book that I'll now be reading, which is just by Katherine Doyle, so I'm hoping I'll love it just as much. But every time I try to remember what this is about, it kind of like escapes from my brain, but it essentially is set in Fantôme, the city of Fantôme, which is a fantastical world that's kind of ruled by these two gangs, I guess, and they are the Cloaks and the Daggers. They are thieves and assassins, and then on the night of her mother's murder, our 18-year-old character Seraphine is absolutely fleeing for her life and takes refuge with the Cloaks, and her heart is set on revenge against the people who killed her mother, who I assume are the Daggers. But nothing can prepare Sarah for the moment she finally comes face to face with Ransom, who is the heir to the Order of the Daggers. And Ransom is shocked to discover that this unassuming farm girl wields a strange and blazing magic that he has never seen before. This is supposed to be a fiery enemies to lovers romance, and I'm so excited. Next up, we have got Best Hex Ever by Nadia El-Fassi, which I picked up at Yelk, and I absolutely can't wait to read because it sounds like witchy and fun. It's also got these beautiful sprayed edges. I know there's no design on them, but this purple is just like a perfect shade. And it follows Dina, who is a skilled kitchen witch and cafe owner, and she serves magic-infused pastries to her loyal customers. But it's hard to really feel something for anyone when she is cursed to hurt anyone that she falls in love with. Enter our male main character, who is Scott, who is a museum curator who's recently back in London after a brutal breakup 2 years ago, and he's looking to make up for all the time that he's missed. He's also determined to be the best man that he can possibly be for his best friend's wedding, but plans take an unexpected turn when he meets the bewitching maid of honor, who is of course Dina, who is growing feelings for him but terrified to fall in love because she doesn't want to hurt him. Next up, we've got Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen, which I believe is a sister author duo, Elizabeth and Helen, and this is the first book in this series that I don't know the name of, and it's basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling, except make it reverse harem. So we follow Rosalina O'Connell, whose father goes missing one night, and in an effort to save him, she ventures into the Fey realm and comes across this castle owned by these 4 men who have taken her father prisoner for some reason. Anyway, she makes a deal to essentially exchange her life for her father's, and they agree so long as she helps them break their curses. And their curses basically to turn into these beasts at nightfall or at midnight or something. So they let her know as well that the only way to break their curse is to find their mates, and because this is a reverse harem romance, I'm guessing that she is the mate of just about all of them. We are on to the last 2 books. First, we've got Gold by Raven Kennedy, which is, I think, the 4th or 5th book in this series, and I am so excited to finally get into like the conclusion of the series and just wrap this whole thing up because it is such an addictive world, such an addictive storyline. But this is basically a King Midas retelling following Oren, who is gold entirely from the tips of her toes to the top of her head, except for her eyes and her teeth. And she is sort of protected, I guess, by King Midas in his kingdom. She's basically imprisoned by him, but she is happy to be there until one day a lucrative opportunity to expand into new kingdom is presented to King Midas, and he takes this opportunity, which results in him and his entire court going traveling to this other kingdom. And along the way, Oren and her company get kidnapped. This leads to her learning more about the world than she ever knew existed, and an enemies to lovers romance with a dark shadow daddy kind of king that is just absolutely addictive. It is typical indie romance in the sense that the actual books themselves, the majority of them are quite slow paced until you get to the last like 100 pages, and then bam, 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 cliffhanger, and crap just hits the fan, and it's just incredible. So please give this series a chance. And our last book is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas, which is the 4th, I think, book in the Throne of Glass series. If you don't know what this is about, then you're probably living under a rock, but I will tell you. Throne of Glass basically follows an infamous assassin in the land of Aurelia called Selena Sardothian, except at the outset of the book, she has been captured and imprisoned in Endovia, which is a prison camp. I think it's also a salt mine, until one day she is offered the opportunity of a lifetime by the king and the captain of the guard, Dorian and Chaos, to escape the prison and participate in a competition to become the king's champion. And if she wins, it will mean 7 years of service before she is free. Naturally, she takes them up on this offer and finds herself embroiled in this world where not only she has to hide her identity, but there is betrayal, but also friendship, but also love triangles, and a whole plot to like destroy the world basically that she didn't even know existed, as well as this kind of character in the back of everybody's mind that she seems to know a lot more about than anyone else does. So those are the 28 books that I want to read before I turn 28. I'm sorry if this was a ridiculously long video. I did try to keep the summaries kind of short, but let me know in the comments down below if there are any books in this list that you think I massively need to prioritize like ASAP. Or just let me know if you've made a list like this of your own and some of the books that are on it. I would love some of your recommendations, and I love talking to you guys in the comments down below. As always, if you like this video, please do like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I release new videos. And also do go and check out my TikTok linked down below, where I post sort of more immediate reactions as I read the books that I'm loving or hating. And I think I post some funny videos as well over there, or at least I think they're funny. So do go check that out. But that is it from me today, guys. I hope you are having an absolutely incredible day wherever in the world that you are having it, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!